The stallion had put 3 men in the dirt with broken ribs before noon, and the tribal leader's mocking voice rang out across the gathered crowd. Sam Bennett, a veteran who hadn't sat a horse since the war, stepped forward knowing that everyone expected him to fail just as violently as the others. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The dust rose in thick clouds across the valley as the sun beat down mercilessly on the gathering that had formed at the edge of the reservation. It was the kind of day that made men squint and horses stamp their hooves nervously, sensing something in the air that went beyond the oppressive heat. The year was 1873, and the frontier was still a place where a man's worth was measured not by the coins in his pocket, but by the strength of his character and the courage in his heart. Among the crowd that had assembled stood a man who seemed out of place yet somehow belonged more than anyone else there. His name was Samuel Bennett, a veteran of the Civil War whose body bore the scars of battles that still haunted his dreams. Sam was 32 years old, though the lines on his face and the weariness in his eyes made him appear older. He had come west after the war, seeking something he couldn't quite name, running from memories that refused to stay buried. Sam had arrived in the territory 3 months earlier with nothing but the clothes on his back, a worn saddle, and a service revolver he prayed he would never have to use again. He had drifted from town to town, taking odd jobs where he could find them, sleeping under the stars more often than not. The war had taken everything from him, his youth, his innocence, and the farm he had left behind in Virginia. His family, upon his return, had looked at him with eyes that no longer recognized the boy who had marched off to war with such foolish pride. The man who came back was someone else entirely, haunted and hollow, and he could not bear their pitying glances. So he had left, heading west like so many other lost souls, hoping the vast emptiness of the frontier might somehow fill the void inside him. The gathering today was unlike anything Sam had witnessed in his travels. Chief Red Eagle, the leader of the local tribe, had issued a challenge that had drawn people from miles around. The chief was a man of legend, respected even by those who saw his people as obstacles to progress. He stood tall and proud, his weathered face showing the wisdom of his 60 years, his traditional headdress of eagle feathers marking his status. Beside him stood his son, a young warrior whose eyes blazed with an intensity that made grown men uncomfortable. But it was not the chief or his son that held everyone's attention. It was the horse. The stallion was a magnificent creature, black as midnight with eyes that seemed to hold a wild intelligence. He was enormous, standing at least 17 hands high, with muscles that rippled beneath his glossy coat. The horse had appeared on the reservation 6 months earlier, a wild Mustang that had somehow evaded capture for years. Several of the tribe's best riders had tried to break him, but the stallion had thrown them all, sometimes with such violence that bones were broken and pride was shattered. The horse had become something of a legend himself, a symbol of the untamed spirit of the land, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. Chief Red Eagle had made his announcement 3 days prior, and word had spread like wildfire. Any man who could ride the black stallion for the span of 100 heartbeats would be granted ownership of the richest grazing lands in the valley, parcels that bordered the river and contained some of the most fertile soil in the territory. It was land that could make a poor man wealthy, that could establish a family for generations. But there was a catch, of course. The challenge was open to all, but the chief had made it clear that he believed no white man possessed the skill or the spirit to master such a creature. His words, delivered through an interpreter, had been laced with contempt. "You come to our lands and take what you want, but you do not understand the soul of this place. You cannot even master one of its wild creatures. Prove me wrong if you can." The taunting words had stung the pride of many settlers, and dozens had shown up that morning to try their luck. Sam had not come with any intention of participating. He had simply been passing through the area when he heard about the gathering, and curiosity had drawn him to the edge of the crowd. He watched as one man after another approached the corral where the stallion was contained, each one full of bravado, each one convinced he would be different. The first rider, a burly ranch hand with arms like tree trunks, lasted less than 10 seconds before the horse sent him flying into the dust. The second, a younger man who claimed to have broken horses since he was a child, managed to stay mounted for perhaps 20 seconds before the stallion twisted in a way that defied physics, sending him crashing into the fence with such force that 2 of his ribs cracked. One after another they tried, and one after another they failed. Some walked away with their dignity intact. Others had to be carried away by friends, groaning in pain. Through it all, Chief Red Eagle watched with his arms crossed, his expression never changing, though Sam thought he detected the faintest hint of satisfaction in the old man's eyes. The chief's son stood beside him, occasionally translating comments from the crowd, his young face showing open contempt for the white men who dared to accept his father's challenge. By noon, more than 20 men had tried and failed to ride the black stallion. The crowd had grown larger as word spread through the nearby settlements, and what had started as a challenge had transformed into something resembling a spectacle. Vendors had set up stands selling water and food, and men were placing bets on how long each rider would last. The atmosphere had taken on a carnival quality, though beneath the surface tension simmered. Every failure was a reminder of the chief's taunt, every broken bone a testament to the gulf that existed between the settlers and the land they sought to claim. Sam stood at the back of the crowd, his hat pulled low to shade his eyes from the relentless sun. He had no intention of trying to ride the horse. The war had taught him the value of knowing his limitations, and he had seen enough violence and pain to last several lifetimes. He told himself he was merely observing, that he would watch for a while longer, and then continue on his way to wherever the road took him next. But something kept him rooted to that spot. Something about the horse drew his attention in a way he could not quite explain. Between attempts, when the stallion was given time to settle, Sam studied the animal carefully. He noticed things that others seemed to miss in their eagerness to prove themselves. The horse was not simply wild or mean-spirited. There was intelligence in those dark eyes, a consciousness that went beyond mere animal instinct. When riders approached with aggression and dominance, the stallion responded with equal force, bucking and twisting with a fury that seemed almost personal. But Sam also noticed moments of hesitation, brief instances when the horse seemed to be evaluating rather than simply reacting. The stallion was not fighting out of mindless rage. He was fighting because he sensed the intentions of those who approached him, and he rejected their attempts to break his spirit. As the afternoon wore on and the failures continued, Sam found himself thinking about his own experiences with horses. Before the war, his family had kept several horses on their farm, and Sam had always possessed a natural affinity for the animals. His father, a stern man who rarely offered praise, had once commented that Sam had a gift, that horses responded to him in ways they did not respond to others. During the war, Sam had served in the cavalry, and his bond with his mount, a gray mare named Abigail, had been one of the few sources of comfort during those dark years. Abigail had been killed beneath him during the Battle of Chancellorsville, and Sam still remembered the moment with painful clarity, the way she had screamed, the way she had looked at him, with what he could have sworn was forgiveness as the life left her eyes. He had not ridden much since the war ended. The few times he had climbed into a saddle, the memories had overwhelmed him, and he had dismounted quickly, making excuses about needing to walk instead. But watching the black stallion now, Sam felt something stirring inside him, something he thought the war had killed. It was not ambition or greed for the land that was being offered. It was something deeper, a recognition of a kindred spirit, a creature as damaged and defiant as himself. The sun had begun its descent toward the horizon when a disturbance in the crowd caught Sam's attention. A well-dressed man was making his way toward the corral, flanked by two companions who looked like hired muscle. The man's name was Clayton Mercer, and Sam had heard of him during his brief time in the territory. Mercer was a cattle baron who owned vast stretches of land and had a reputation for getting what he wanted, regardless of the methods required. He was in his mid-40s, with silver threading through his dark hair and eyes that calculated the worth of everything they saw. Mercer approached Chief Red Eagle with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. He did not wait to be acknowledged, but spoke loudly enough for the entire crowd to hear. "Chief, I have watched this circus long enough. Your challenge is nothing but a trick, an impossible task designed to humiliate white men. No one can ride that devil horse because you have drugged it or trained it to be vicious. I propose we end this charade right now. Name your price for the land and we can conclude this business like civilized men." The interpreter translated Mercer's words, and Chief Red Eagle's expression hardened. When he responded, his voice was quiet but carried clearly across the suddenly silent gathering. "The land is not for sale at any price. It is sacred to my people, given to us by our ancestors. The challenge stands as I stated it. Any man who can ride the horse for 100 heartbeats may claim the land. If your people cannot accomplish this, it is not because of trickery. It is because you do not understand what it means to be one with such a creature. You seek to dominate, but dominance is not mastery." Mercer's face flushed red with anger. He took a step closer to the chief, his hand moving toward his belt where a pistol was holstered. The two men with him tensed, ready to support whatever action their employer might take. Several of the tribal warriors also moved forward, hands on their weapons. The crowd held its collective breath, sensing that the situation was on the verge of turning violent. It was Sam who stepped forward, moving before he had fully processed the decision to act. He did not draw a weapon or shout a challenge. He simply walked between Mercer and the chief, his hands visible and empty, his voice calm but firm. "That is enough. The chief has made his terms clear. If you do not wish to accept the challenge, then step aside and let others try. There is no need for violence here." Mercer turned his attention to Sam, his eyes scanning the veteran from head to toe, taking in the worn clothes, the dusty boots, the absence of any visible wealth. "And who are you to interfere in matters that do not concern you?" Mercer demanded, his tone dripping with disdain. "You are nobody, just another drifter, with nothing to your name. Step aside before you get hurt." Sam met Mercer's gaze without flinching. The war had exposed him to men far more dangerous than this cattle baron, men who dealt in death rather than money. He had learned that true courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. "I am Sam Bennett, and I am indeed nobody of consequence. But I believe the chief's challenge is fair. If you want the land, ride the horse. If you cannot, then accept defeat with grace." For a moment, it seemed Mercer might order his men to remove Sam by force. The crowd had gone completely silent, watching the confrontation with bated breath. Then, unexpectedly, Mercer laughed, though there was no humor in the sound. "Very well, Drifter. Since you are so eager to defend the chief's honor, why do you not accept the challenge yourself? Or are you all words and no action?" The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Sam had not intended to put himself in this position. He had merely sought to prevent bloodshed, to defuse a situation that was spiraling out of control. But now all eyes were on him, and he realized that backing down would not only shame him, but would give Mercer the excuse he needed to escalate the confrontation. Sam glanced toward the corral where the black stallion stood, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. In that instant, Sam felt a connection, a silent understanding that passed between them. The horse was waiting, not with hostility, but with something that resembled curiosity. Sam turned back to Mercer and nodded slowly. I will accept the challenge. But I do so on my own terms and for my own reasons, not because you goad me into it. If I succeed, the land will go to Chief Red Eagle to do with as he sees fit. I want nothing from this but the chance to prove that respect matters more than dominance." Mercer's smile widened, and Sam realized the cattle baron had gotten exactly what he wanted. By manipulating Sam into accepting the challenge, Mercer could sit back and watch another man fail, further proof that the task was impossible. And when Sam inevitably was thrown from the horse, Mercer could use that failure as justification for taking the land by other means, claiming the challenge was a sham. But it was too late for Sam to reconsider. He had committed himself, and he would see it through. Chief Red Eagle studied Sam with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. The old man's eyes seemed to look past the surface, past the clothes and the scars, searching for something deeper. After a long moment, the chief spoke, and the interpreter relayed his words. "You are different from the others who have tried today. I see pain in you and loss. The horse will sense this. Whether that works in your favor or against you, only time will tell. If you are ready, approach him." Sam walked toward the corral, his heart pounding in a way it had not since his last battle. The crowd parted to let him through, and he could hear the whispered conversations, the speculation about how long he would last. Some predicted he would be thrown immediately. Others gave him slightly more credit, perhaps 30 seconds. No one expected him to succeed. Even Sam himself was not certain what had possessed him to accept this challenge. He had no need for land, no desire to prove anything to anyone. Yet something compelled him forward, something that went beyond logic or reason. As he reached the corral fence, Sam paused and took several deep breaths, trying to center himself. He thought about Abigail, his mare from the war, and the bond they had shared. He thought about the long nights on the farm when he was a boy, sleeping in the stable because he preferred the company of horses to the loneliness of his room. He thought about all the pain and loss that had shaped him, all the reasons he had to be bitter and closed off from the world. And then he let those thoughts go, releasing them into the air like smoke from a dying fire. When Sam climbed over the fence and dropped into the corral, the black stallion turned to face him. The horse did not immediately charge or rear up in aggression. Instead, he stood his ground, watching Sam with those intelligent dark eyes, evaluating this new challenger. Sam remained still, making no sudden movements, projecting no hostility. He simply stood there, 20 feet from the horse, and waited. The crowd grew restless, expecting action, but Sam ignored them. This was not about the spectators or their expectations. This was between him and the horse, and it would unfold in its own time. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. The sun continued its descent, casting long shadows across the corral. Still, Sam and the stallion faced each other in silence. Some in the crowd began to jeer, calling Sam a coward, saying he was stalling. But Chief Red Eagle raised his hand, commanding silence. The old warrior understood what was happening, even if others did not. This was not cowardice. This was respect, a recognition that mastery could not be forced, only earned. Slowly, Sam took a single step forward. The stallion's ears flicked, alert but not alarmed. Sam took another step, then another, moving with deliberate slowness. He kept his breathing steady and his gaze soft, not staring directly into the horse's eyes in a way that might be perceived as a challenge. Instead, he looked at the stallion's shoulder, his neck, acknowledging the animal's presence without threatening it. With each step, Sam spoke in a low, gentle voice, not really forming words so much as sounds, a rhythm that was meant to soothe rather than command. The horse shifted its weight but did not bolt or attack. Sam continued his slow approach, and when he was about 10 feet away, he stopped again. He could see the stallion's muscles tensing, could see the animal calculating whether this human represented danger. Sam remained still, his arms loose at his sides, his entire posture communicating that he meant no harm. He thought about what the chief had said about dominance versus mastery, and he understood the distinction in a way he had not fully grasped before. Dominance was about imposing your will through force, breaking an animal's spirit until it had no choice but to submit. Mastery was about partnership, about earning trust and respect through patience and understanding. After what felt like an eternity, the stallion took a step toward Sam, then another. The crowd gasped, but Sam did not react. He remained perfectly still as the magnificent creature approached him, close enough now that Sam could feel the heat radiating from the horse's body. The stallion lowered its head and sniffed at Sam's chest, his shoulder, his hands. Sam slowly raised one hand, moving with the same deliberate slowness he had maintained throughout, and gently touched the horse's neck. The stallion flinched at the contact but did not pull away. Sam kept his hand there, feeling the powerful muscles beneath the glossy coat, feeling the rapid heartbeat that echoed his own. Sam began to stroke the horse's neck, his movements gentle and rhythmic. He continued to speak in that low, soothing voice, telling the stallion about the war, about Abigail, about the loneliness and pain that had driven him west. He did not know if the horse understood the words, but he believed the animal could sense the emotion behind them, the vulnerability and honesty. He told the stallion that he too had been broken by the world, that he understood what it meant to fight against those who sought to control you, to refuse to surrender your spirit, even when everything and everyone tried to force you into submission. The minutes stretched on, and Sam continued to build the connection. He moved slowly around the horse, touching different parts of its body, getting the stallion accustomed to his presence. When he finally reached for the rope halter that had been left on the horse from previous attempts, the stallion tensed but allowed it. Sam gathered the rope in his hands, not pulling or forcing, simply holding it loosely. He walked around to the horse's side, and for the first time, placed his hand on the stallion's back. The horse's skin twitched at the contact, but again, it did not bolt or fight. Sam knew that the real test was about to begin. Everything up to this point had been preamble, a building of trust that could be shattered in an instant. He took a deep breath and prepared himself for what was to come. The crowd had grown silent again, watching with a mixture of anticipation and disbelief. Even Mercer had stopped his mocking commentary, his eyes narrowed as he watched Sam's methodical approach. Chief Red Eagle leaned forward slightly, his weathered face showing genuine interest in what would happen next. With smooth, practiced movements, Sam gripped the horse's mane and the rope halter. He positioned himself, and then, in one fluid motion, he pulled himself up and swung his leg over the stallion's back. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The horse stood completely still, as if frozen by surprise. Then, as Sam settled his weight and adjusted his position, the stallion exploded into motion. The force of the first buck nearly sent Sam flying. His teeth rattled and his vision blurred as the horse's powerful body twisted beneath him. But Sam had ridden through cavalry charges, had stayed mounted while bullets flew past his head and cannon fire shook the ground. He clamped his legs tight and leaned forward, using his core strength to maintain his balance. The stallion bucked again, this time adding a spinning motion that would have thrown a less experienced rider instantly. Sam moved with the horse rather than against it, anticipating the movements, flowing with the chaos rather than fighting it. The stallion reared up on its hind legs, pawing at the air with its front hooves. Sam pressed himself against the horse's neck, maintaining his grip, refusing to be dislodged. When the stallion's front hooves crashed back to the ground, the impact traveled through Sam's entire body, but he held on. The horse began to run, racing around the perimeter of the corral at a speed that made the fence posts blur together. Sam could hear the crowd shouting, but the sounds were distant and meaningless. His entire world had narrowed to the powerful creature beneath him and the desperate struggle to remain mounted. The stallion tried every trick, every technique it had used to throw previous riders. It stopped suddenly, trying to use momentum to send Sam flying over its head, but Sam was ready and pulled back hard on the halter. It spun in tight circles, trying to disorient its rider, but Sam kept his eyes focused on the horizon, using it as an anchor point. It bucked and twisted and reared again and again, each movement a testament to its strength and determination. But with each failed attempt to dislodge him, Sam could feel something changing. The horse's movements became slightly less violent, slightly less desperate. It was not submission. Not yet, but perhaps the beginning of acceptance. Sam's arms burned with the effort of holding on, and his legs felt like they were on fire from gripping the stallion's powerful sides. Sweat poured down his face, stinging his eyes, but he did not dare release his grip even for a moment to wipe it away. The sun was lower now, casting everything in shades of orange and gold, and Sam realized he had lost all sense of time. He had no idea how long he had been on the horse's back, whether it had been 20 seconds or 2 minutes. All he knew was that he had to keep holding on, had to prove to this magnificent creature that he would not give up, that he respected its strength, but would not be defeated by it. The stallion's breathing had become labored, great heaving breaths that Sam could feel through his own body where it pressed against the horse's back. The animal's coat was slick with sweat, and foam had formed around its mouth where the rope halter rubbed. Sam found himself speaking again, words of encouragement mixed with apologies, telling the horse that he understood, that he knew this was hard, that they could get through this together. His voice was hoarse from the dust and the exertion, barely more than a whisper, but he continued speaking because it helped him focus, helped him maintain the connection he had worked so hard to establish before mounting. Then something shifted, something. The stallion's movements became less frantic, less driven by panic and more by exhaustion. The horse was still fighting, still trying to throw its rider, but there was a quality to the struggle now that was different. Sam sensed it immediately, felt it in the way the stallion's muscles moved beneath him. This was no longer about fear or rage. This was about pride, about the horse's refusal to accept defeat, even when its body was telling it to stop. Sam understood that feeling intimately. He had felt it during the war, during those moments when survival seemed impossible but surrender was unthinkable. He had felt it in the years since, when despair threatened to overwhelm him, but he kept moving forward anyway, one foot in front of the other, because to stop meant to give in to the darkness. From somewhere outside the corral, Sam heard a voice shouting numbers. Someone was counting, marking the passage of time. 75, 76, 77. The realization struck Sam that he was close, so impossibly close to achieving what everyone had believed was impossible. The knowledge sent a surge of determination through him, giving him strength he did not know he still possessed. 78, 79. The stallion bucked once more, but it was a half-hearted effort, the fight draining out of the magnificent animal as exhaustion took its toll. 80, 81, 82. Sam leaned forward, pressing his face against the horse's sweat-soaked neck, and whispered words that only the stallion could hear. "You are the strongest, bravest creature I have ever known. You have fought with everything you have, and you have earned my respect 1,000 times over. But it is time now. It is time to stop fighting and start trusting. I will never hurt you. I will never break you. I promise you this on everything I hold sacred." 88, 89, 90. The stallion's movement slowed further, transitioning from bucking to a kind of agitated prancing. Sam maintained his seat easily now, though every muscle in his body screamed in protest. 93, 94, 95. The horse came to a complete stop in the center of the corral, its sides heaving with exhaustion. Sam could feel the animal's heart pounding, could feel the tremors running through its body. 96, 97. Sam remained absolutely still, not celebrating, not moving, just sitting there with his hands gently stroking the stallion's neck. 98, 99, 100. The crowd erupted in cheers so loud that it seemed to shake the very ground. People were shouting, jumping up and down, embracing each other in their excitement. They had witnessed something extraordinary, something that would be talked about for years to come. But Sam barely heard them. His entire focus was on the horse beneath him, on the trust that had been earned through patience and respect rather than force. Slowly, carefully, Sam dismounted. His legs nearly gave out when his feet touched the ground, and he had to grab the horse's mane to steady himself. His body felt like it had been beaten with hammers, every muscle and joint protesting the abuse it had endured. The stallion turned its head to look at Sam, and in those dark eyes, the veteran saw something that had not been there before. It was not submission or defeat. It was acknowledgement, a recognition of what had passed between them. Sam reached up and stroked the horse's face, running his fingers along the soft muzzle. The stallion did not pull away. Instead, it lowered its head slightly, allowing the touch, perhaps even welcoming it. The gesture was small, but its significance was enormous. The bond that had been forged in those intense minutes would not be easily broken. Chief Red Eagle approached the corral, his weathered face showing an emotion that Sam could not quite identify. The old warrior studied Sam for a long moment, then nodded slowly. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly across the now silent crowd. The interpreter translated his words. "Today, I have seen something I did not expect. This man did not break the horse's spirit. He earned its respect. He did not dominate through force. He achieved mastery through understanding. The land I offered is his by right of victory, but I sense he will not claim it for himself." Sam shook his head, confirming the chief's intuition. "With your permission, Chief Red Eagle, I would ask that the land remain with your people. I have no need of it. What I have gained today is worth far more than any piece of ground, no matter how fertile or valuable." The chief's eyes gleamed with something that might have been approval, might have been satisfaction. The old man gestured toward the stallion. "And what of the horse? Do you claim ownership of him?" Sam looked at the magnificent creature, still breathing hard from their struggle, still proud despite its exhaustion. The stallion was watching him, waiting to see what would happen next. Sam considered the question carefully. The idea of ownership felt wrong somehow, too possessive for what had transpired between him and the stallion. This was not a creature that could be owned in any meaningful sense. It was a living being, with its own will, its own spirit, its own right to freedom. Yet Sam also knew that if he simply walked away, the horse would likely face another series of challenges from men who would not treat it with the respect it deserved. He looked at Chief Red Eagle and spoke slowly, choosing his words with care. "I would ask to be allowed to care for the horse, but not to own it. If it chooses to stay with me, then we will travel together as companions. If it chooses to leave, then I will not stop it, not stop. A horse like this should never be truly owned by anyone. It should be honored and respected, but not possessed." The chief translated Sam's words for his son and the other tribal members who stood nearby. A murmur of approval rippled through them, and Chief Red Eagle nodded with satisfaction. "You speak wisdom beyond what I expected from your people. The horse is called Shadow by my tribe, for the way he moves like darkness across the land. I give you permission to care for him, and I believe he will choose to remain with you. What you built today through patience and respect is not easily found or forgotten." Before Sam could respond, Clayton Mercer pushed his way through the crowd, his face red with anger and disbelief. "This is ridiculous," he shouted. "The whole thing was a setup. That drifter must have some kind of trick or training we do not know about. No one could ride that horse so quickly unless something underhanded was going on." I demand another challenge, or I will take this matter to the territorial authorities. Chief Red Eagle turned to face Mercer, and though the old warrior was shorter and older than the cattle baron, there was a presence about him that made Mercer take an involuntary step backward. There is no deception here except in your own heart. You saw what every other person witnessed. This man succeeded where all others failed, because he approached the task with the right spirit. If you wish to make accusations, you will find no support from my people or from those who watched with honest eyes. Several men in the crowd voiced their agreement, and even some of those who had initially sided with Mercer seemed uncomfortable with his accusations. They had seen Sam's approach, had watched the patience and respect he had shown. There was nothing magical or deceitful about it, just skill and understanding that most of them lacked. Mercer realized he was losing the crowd and changed tactics. "Fine," he spat. "Let the drifter keep his horse, but the land should still be available for purchase. Chief, I offer you $5,000 for those grazing parcels. That is more than fair, more than generous." The chief's expression hardened into something resembling stone. "The land is not for sale at any price. It was offered as part of a challenge, and that challenge has been met. My word stands, and the land remains with my people as it always has. If you attempt to take it by force or through your territorial laws, you will find that we are not without resources or allies of our own. This discussion is finished." Mercer looked around, seeking support from his hired men, but even they seemed reluctant to push the issue further. The cattle baron's face twisted with fury, and he pointed a finger at Sam. "This is not over," he said, his voice low and threatening. "You have made an enemy today, Drifter. I do not forget, and I do not forgive." Sam met Mercer's glare with calm eyes, unintimidated by the threat. "I did not seek to make enemies or friends today. I simply accepted a challenge and saw it through. What you choose to do with that is your business. But I would suggest you find a better use for your anger than threatening a man who has done you no wrong." For a moment it seemed Mercer might try to escalate the confrontation physically, but the presence of Chief Red Eagle and his warriors, combined with the clear disapproval of the crowd, kept him in check. With a final venomous look at both Sam and the chief, Mercer turned and stalked away, his men following behind him. The crowd began to disperse, people heading back to their homes and settlements, still talking excitedly about what they had witnessed. Sam turned his attention back to Shadow, running his hands along the horse's neck and shoulders, checking for injuries. The stallion had several minor cuts and scrapes from the ordeal, nothing serious but enough to require attention. Chief Red Eagle stepped closer, watching the interaction between man and horse with interest. "You may stay on our land tonight," he offered. "We have water and supplies, and your horse needs rest. Tomorrow you can decide where your path will take you." Sam accepted the offer gratefully. His body was exhausted, every muscle protesting the abuse it had endured during the ride. He needed rest as much as Shadow did. The chief led him to an area near the tribal settlement where travelers were sometimes allowed to camp. Several of the younger warriors helped him gather wood for a fire and brought water for both Sam and the horse. As the sun finally set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of purple and red, Sam sat by the fire and watched Shadow grazing nearby. The stallion had not wandered far, staying within sight of Sam even though there was nothing preventing it from leaving. The horse would lift its head periodically and look toward Sam, as if checking to make sure the man was still there. Sam found himself smiling at the behavior, touched by the animal's apparent attachment. He thought about the journey that had brought him to this moment, all the pain and loss and wandering that had led him to this place. Perhaps there was meaning in it after all, some purpose he had not recognized until now. That night, Sam slept fitfully, his dreams haunted by memories of the war mixed with images of the black stallion. He woke several times, each time checking to make sure Shadow was still nearby. The horse seemed equally restless, occasionally pacing or nickering softly into the darkness. As dawn broke across the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold, Sam rose from his bedroll feeling sore but strangely renewed. He had not felt this sense of purpose in years, not since before the war had taken everything from him. He approached Shadow slowly, speaking in that same gentle voice he had used the previous day. The stallion lifted its head from grazing and watched Sam's approach but did not move away. When Sam reached out to stroke the horse's neck, Shadow leaned into the touch, a gesture of trust that made Sam's throat tighten with emotion. "Good morning, friend," Sam whispered. "We have quite a journey ahead of us, you and I. I'm not sure where we are going, but I think we will figure it out together." Chief Red Eagle appeared a short time later, accompanied by his son and several other tribal members. They brought food for Sam and grain for Shadow, along with a simple saddle and bridle. The chief explained that these were gifts, tokens of respect for what Sam had accomplished. The old warrior also shared something else, a warning. Clayton Mercer is not a man who accepts defeat gracefully. He has influence in the territorial government and connections with the military. You should be cautious as you travel. Men like him have long memories and longer reaches. Sam thanked the chief for the warning and the gifts. He had faced danger before and survived. If Mercer chose to pursue some kind of vendetta, Sam would deal with it when the time came. For now, he was more interested in the path forward than the threats behind. He spent the morning getting Shadow accustomed to the saddle and bridle, working with the same patience he had shown during the challenge. The horse accepted the equipment with minimal resistance, as if understanding that this was part of their new partnership. By mid-morning, Sam was ready to leave. He said his farewells to Chief Red Eagle and the tribal members who had gathered to see him off. The old warrior clasped Sam's hand in a firm grip. "You have taught my people something important today. You have shown that not all white men seek only to take and destroy. Some still understand the old ways, the importance of respect and balance. Travel safely, Samuel Bennett, and may your path be blessed." Sam mounted Shadow, and the horse stood steady beneath him, no longer fighting against the weight of a rider. They set off toward the east, following a trail that wound through the valleys and hills. Sam had no specific destination in mind, no plan beyond putting distance between himself and the settlement. He would find work somewhere, perhaps on a ranch or farm, where his skills with horses would be valued. Shadow would stay with him or not, depending on the stallion's own choices. Sam had meant what he said about not truly owning the horse. This was a partnership based on mutual respect, not ownership. The first 2 days of travel passed peacefully. Sam and Shadow fell into a rhythm, covering ground steadily but without urgency. They followed streams and game trails, camping under the stars each night. Sam found himself talking to the horse constantly, sharing thoughts and memories he had kept locked inside for years. He told Shadow about his childhood on the farm in Virginia, about his parents and siblings, about the simple joys of life before the war. He spoke about the battles he had fought, the friends he had lost, the horrors he had witnessed. And he talked about Abigail, his mare from the cavalry, and the guilt he still carried over her death. Shadow listened to it all, or at least seemed to, his ears flicking back and forth to catch Sam's voice. The horse's presence was comforting in a way Sam had not expected. For the first time in years, he did not feel completely alone. The emptiness that had plagued him since the war began to feel less consuming, less absolute. Perhaps healing was possible after all. Perhaps the journey west had not been about running away from his past, but about finding something that could help him carry it. On the third day, as they crested a ridge overlooking a broad valley, Sam spotted something that made him rein Shadow to a stop. In the distance, perhaps 2 miles away, he could see a group of riders moving across the landscape. Even from this distance, Sam could tell they were not ordinary travelers. They moved with purpose, in a formation that suggested military training or professional tracking. Sam's instincts, honed by years of warfare and survival, told him these men were looking for something or someone. And given Mercer's threats, Sam had a sinking feeling he knew who that someone might be. He urged Shadow down the backside of the ridge, seeking cover among the rocks and sparse trees that dotted the landscape. He needed to think, to plan. If Mercer had indeed sent men after him, Sam had to decide how to respond. Running seemed like the smart choice, but it would also mean constantly looking over his shoulder, never settling, never finding peace. Standing and fighting was an option, but Sam had seen enough violence to last several lifetimes. He did not want to add more blood to his hands if he could avoid it. Shadow seemed to sense Sam's tension and moved carefully, picking his way through the rocky terrain with sure-footed grace. Sam guided the horse into a small canyon where they would be hidden from anyone traveling through the valley. He dismounted and led Shadow deeper into the canyon until they reached a spot where a small spring fed a pool of clear water. Here they would wait and watch, and Sam would decide what to do when he had more information about who those riders were and what they wanted. Sam spent the afternoon watching the canyon entrance, trying to catch glimpses of the riders through the gaps in the rocks. Shadow grazed peacefully nearby, seemingly unconcerned with the potential danger. As the sun began its descent, Sam finally got a clear view of 3 of the men as they passed close enough for identification. His heart sank when he recognized 2 of them as the hired men who had accompanied Clayton Mercer to the challenge. They were tracking him, just as the chief had warned. Sam cursed under his breath and tried to formulate a plan. He could continue hiding and hope they passed by without discovering his location, but that felt cowardly and temporary. These men would not give up easily, and Sam did not want to spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder. He could try to evade them, using his knowledge of the terrain and Shadow's speed to stay ahead, but again, that seemed like postponing the inevitable rather than solving the problem. The third option was to confront them directly, to face whatever Mercer had sent them to do and deal with it decisively. This option carried the most risk, but also the possibility of ending the threat permanently. Sam's military training kicked in as he analyzed the situation. There were at least 5 riders that he had seen, possibly more. They were armed and appeared professional in their movements, likely experienced gunfighters or bounty hunters that Mercer had hired. Sam had his service revolver and a rifle he had acquired during his travels, but he was just one man. The odds were not in his favor if it came to direct combat. However, Sam also had advantages they did not. He had the element of surprise, knowledge of the terrain from his vantage point, and most importantly, he had Shadow. The stallion's speed and agility could be decisive if used correctly. As darkness fell, Sam made his decision. He would not run, and he would not hide. Instead, he would turn the tables on his pursuers. He spent the next hour preparing, checking his weapons, studying the terrain, and planning his approach. When the moon rose, casting everything in silver light, Sam mounted Shadow and guided the horse quietly out of the canyon. He had seen where the riders had made their camp about a mile to the north in a small grove of cottonwood trees near a creek. That is where he would go. The ride through the moonlit landscape was surreal, almost dreamlike. Shadow moved silently, his dark coat making him nearly invisible in the shadows. Sam kept the horse to soft ground where the hoofbeats would not carry, taking a circuitous route that would bring them to the camp from an unexpected direction. His heart pounded with a familiar rhythm, the same nervous energy he had felt before cavalry charges during the war. But this time, there was something different. This time, he was not just fighting for survival or following orders. He was fighting for the freedom to live his life on his own terms, to protect the bond he had formed with Shadow, to prove that he would not be intimidated or controlled. When they were within 100 yards of the camp, Sam dismounted and approached on foot, leaving Shadow hidden in a cluster of boulders. He could see the orange glow of the campfire and hear the low murmur of voices. Moving with practiced stealth, he crept closer until he could make out the conversation. The men were discussing their search, complaining about the difficulty of tracking someone across such vast territory. One of them, a heavy-set man with a thick beard, was saying that Mercer was offering $1,000 to anyone who brought back the Black Stallion and made sure the drifter would not be a problem anymore. The words confirmed Sam's suspicions and hardened his resolve. These men were not just following him, they were here to kill him and take Shadow. Mercer's wounded pride had transformed into murderous intent, and Sam knew that trying to reason or negotiate would be pointless. He circled around the camp, staying in the shadows, counting the men. There were 6 in total, all armed, all looking capable and dangerous. Sam studied their positions, their weapons, the layout of their camp. Then he retreated back to Shadow and prepared for what would happen next. Sam knew he could not take on 6 armed men in a direct fight and hope to survive, but he also knew that fear was a powerful weapon, and confusion could be just as effective as bullets. He mounted Shadow and rode back toward the camp, this time making no effort to be quiet. When he was about 50 yards out, he urged Shadow into a gallop and fired his rifle into the air, the shot echoing across the night landscape like thunder. The men in the camp scrambled for their weapons, shouting in alarm and confusion. Sam rode past the camp at full speed, firing twice more, aiming high to avoid hitting anyone but creating maximum chaos. The rider saw only a dark figure on a black horse moving with impossible speed through the moonlight, and their shots went wild as they tried to track the phantom rider. Sam circled back, approaching from a different angle, and fired again. The men were shouting now, some saying it was Indians attacking, others claiming it was more than one rider. They were disorganized, frightened, shooting at shadows. Sam made 2 more passes, each time approaching from a different direction, each time firing a few shots and then disappearing into the darkness. The psychological effect was devastating. The hired gunmen, tough as they might be, were unnerved by an enemy they could not see clearly or predict. After the 5th pass, Sam retreated to a ridge overlooking the camp and waited. He watched as the men argued among themselves, their confidence shattered by the attack. 2 of them wanted to leave immediately, claiming the job was not worth their lives. The others tried to maintain order, but Sam could see that their unity was fracturing. He had achieved what he wanted without killing anyone, turning the hunters into the hunted, making them question whether pursuing him was worth the risk. As dawn approached, Sam watched the hired men break camp in disarray. The argument that had started during the night had intensified, and it was clear that the group had fractured beyond repair. 3 of the men saddled their horses and rode off toward the east, abandoning the pursuit entirely. The remaining 3 looked uncertain, their earlier confidence replaced by nervous glances at the surrounding terrain. They spoke in hushed tones for several minutes, before finally mounting up and heading south back toward the settlement where Mercer waited. Sam felt a grim satisfaction watching them retreat. He had proven that he would not be an easy target, that hunting him would cost more than Mercer was likely willing to pay. Sam remained on the ridge until the last of the riders had disappeared from view. Only then did he allow himself to relax, the tension draining from his body and leaving him exhausted. He had not slept all night, and the adrenaline that had sustained him through the confrontation was fading rapidly. He rode Shadow back to the hidden canyon where they had sheltered before, and this time he allowed himself to sleep, trusting the horse to alert him if danger approached. When he woke several hours later, the sun was high in the sky and Shadow was grazing contentedly nearby. Sam felt refreshed but also troubled. He had won this round, but the underlying problem remained. Mercer would not give up, and as long as the cattle baron saw Sam and Shadow as threats to his pride and plans, there would be no peace. Sam spent the afternoon considering his options while he tended to Shadow and his equipment. He could continue running, staying ahead of whatever Mercer sent after him, but that was no way to live. He could try to disappear completely, perhaps heading further west into territories where Mercer's influence did not reach, but that felt like surrendering his right to exist in the world on his own terms. The more Sam thought about it, the more he realized there was only one real solution. He needed to confront Mercer directly, not with violence, but with truth and witnesses. He needed to expose the cattle baron's actions and make it clear that any further attempts on Sam's life would have consequences Mercer could not control. The plan that formed in Sam's mind was risky, but it had a chance of working. He would return to the settlement, but not alone and not quietly. He would gather allies, people who had witnessed the challenge and respected what he had accomplished. Chief Red Eagle and his people would be crucial, but Sam also remembered others in the crowd who had seemed honest and fair-minded. If he could bring enough people together, if he could make Mercer's actions public and undeniable, perhaps the cattle baron would be forced to back down rather than risk his reputation and business interests. It was not a perfect plan, but it was better than living as a fugitive or engaging in a cycle of violence that would only end in death. Sam made his decision. The next morning, he and Shadow began the journey back toward the reservation. It took 2 days of steady travel, and with each mile, Sam felt his resolve strengthening. He was done running from his past, done letting fear and pain dictate his choices. The war had tried to break him, and in many ways it had succeeded. But meeting Shadow and accepting the chief's challenge had awakened something inside him that he thought was dead. It was hope, perhaps, or purpose, or simply the stubborn determination to live a life that meant something. When Sam reached the reservation, Chief Red Eagle received him with surprise and concern. Sam explained what had happened, the hired gunman and the attempt on his life, and his plan to confront Mercer publicly. The old warrior listened carefully, his weathered face showing no emotion until Sam finished speaking. Then the chief nodded slowly. "Your plan has merit, but it also has danger. Mercer has money and influence that can corrupt even honest men. However, I believe there are enough people who saw what you accomplished, who understand the honor in what you did, that they will stand with you. My people will support you in this. We have our own grievances with Mercer and his attempts to take our land. Perhaps it is time to face him together." Over the next 3 days, Sam and Chief Red Eagle worked to gather support. They visited farms and small ranches, talking to the people who had witnessed the challenge. Many were sympathetic, having their own stories of Mercer's heavy-handed tactics and unfair business practices. Sam was surprised by how many were willing to stand against the cattle baron when given the chance. A merchant who Mercer had tried to drive out of business, a rancher whose water rights had been threatened, a widow whose late husband had been cheated in a land deal. One by one, they agreed to attend a public meeting that Sam was organizing in the town square. The tension in the settlement was palpable as the day of the meeting arrived. Word had spread about Sam's return and his intention to confront Mercer, and the entire town seemed to be holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen. Sam rode Shadow down the main street with Chief Red Eagle beside him on his own mount, followed by a procession of tribal members and settlers who had agreed to support them. The crowd that gathered in the square was the largest Sam had seen since the day of the challenge, perhaps even larger. Mercer was already there, standing on the steps of the town hall with several of his men flanking him. When he saw Sam approaching, his face twisted with rage, but he maintained enough composure to address the crowd. "This man is a troublemaker and an agitator," Mercer shouted, pointing at Sam. "He has assaulted my employees, threatened my business interests, and now he comes here with these people to make false accusations against me. I demand that the marshal arrest him immediately for his crimes." Sam dismounted from Shadow and walked forward calmly, his hands visible and empty. The marshal, a grizzled man named Tom Crawford, who had always struck Sam as fair-minded, stepped between them. "Now hold on. Everyone just calmed down. Mercer, what exactly are you accusing this man of? And Sam, what is this all about? Sam took a deep breath and addressed not just the marshal but the entire crowd. I accepted Chief Red Eagle's challenge and succeeded where others failed. I refused the land that was offered and asked only to care for the horse called Shadow. Clayton Mercer was humiliated by this, and rather than accepting the outcome with grace, he hired 6 men to hunt me down, kill me, and take the horse. Those men tracked me for 3 days with orders to make sure I would not be a problem anymore. Those were their exact words. The crowd murmured and Mercer's face grew redder. That is a lie, he spat. You have no proof of these wild accusations. You are nothing but a drifter with delusions of importance. Sam had expected this response and was prepared. He gestured to the people who had accompanied him. I have witnesses who can testify to your character and your methods, and I believe some of your own hired men might be willing to talk if given the opportunity and protection from your retaliation. On cue, one of the men who had been in the hunting party stepped forward from the crowd. His face was pale and his hands shook slightly, but his voice was clear. My name is Henry Walsh, and I was one of the men Mercer hired. Everything this man says is true. We were paid to track him down and kill him, make it look like an accident or an Indian attack. I am done being part of Mercer's schemes. I want no more blood on my hands. The crowd erupted in shocked exclamations, and Mercer lunged toward Walsh with murder in his eyes. You traitorous dog, I will destroy you for this. The marshal and several other men grabbed Mercer, holding him back as he struggled and shouted. Other voices began speaking up from the crowd, people sharing their own stories of Mercer's corruption and intimidation. The merchant told of threats and sabotage. The rancher spoke of water rights that had been stolen through legal manipulation. The widow tearfully recounted how her husband had been cheated and driven to despair. Each testimony added to the weight of evidence against the cattle baron, and with each revelation, Mercer's support crumbled. Chief Red Eagle stepped forward, his voice carrying authority that silenced the crowd. This man Mercer has also approached my people multiple times, trying to buy or take land that is sacred to us. He has threatened us with soldiers and lawyers, with violence and starvation. We have tolerated his presence because we hoped for peace, but we will not tolerate murder. If the law of your people does not hold him accountable, then we will seek our own justice. The threat was clear, and the territorial authorities understood that antagonizing the tribe could lead to conflicts that no one wanted. Marshal Crawford looked at Mercer with disgust and disappointment. Clayton, I have known you for 10 years, and I thought you were a hard businessman, but an honest one. It seems I was wrong. Based on these testimonies, I am placing you under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and various fraud charges. You will be held until a territorial judge can hear the case. Mercer struggled against the men holding him, his face contorted with rage and disbelief. You cannot do this to me. I am Clayton Mercer. I own half this territory. I will have all your jobs, your homes, everything. The marshal shook his head sadly. That is where you are wrong, Clayton. You do not own people, no matter how much money you have. Take him to the jail. As Mercer was led away, still shouting threats and curses, the crowd began to disperse. Many people approached Sam to shake his hand or offer words of support and gratitude. Some thanked him for standing up to Mercer when they had been too afraid to do so themselves. Others simply wanted to see Shadow up close, marveling at the magnificent stallion who stood calmly beside Sam through all the chaos. Chief Red Eagle clasped Sam's shoulder with a firm grip. You have done a great thing today. You have shown courage not just in riding a wild horse, but in standing for what is right against a powerful enemy. My people will remember this, and you will always be welcome on our lands. Sam felt a weight lifting from his shoulders, a burden he had carried since the war finally beginning to ease. He had not sought this confrontation, had not wanted to be a hero or a champion of justice. But sometimes life pushed you toward moments that defined who you were, and you had to choose whether to run or stand. Sam had spent years running, and now that he had finally stood his ground, he understood that healing was possible. The scars of the past would never fully disappear, but they did not have to control his future. In the weeks that followed, Sam made a home for himself near the reservation, on land that Chief Red Eagle offered him as a gift rather than a transaction. He built a small cabin with help from tribal members and settlers who had become friends. Shadow remained with him, not because he was owned, but because he chose to stay. The bond between man and horse deepened with each passing day, a partnership built on mutual respect and understanding. Sam began working with other horses, teaching young riders the importance of patience and connection rather than domination. The story of Sam and Shadow spread throughout the territory, becoming legend. People spoke of the veteran who had achieved the impossible, not through force but through respect, who had stood against corruption and won. But for Sam, the greatest victory was not the challenge or the confrontation with Mercer. It was the peace he found in the simple moments, riding Shadow across open country, watching the sun set over the mountains, knowing that he had finally found a place where he belonged. The war had taken much from him, but it had not taken everything. In the eyes of a wild stallion and the wisdom of an old chief, Sam had discovered that redemption was possible, that broken spirits could heal, and that sometimes the greatest strength lay not in conquest, but in connection. And as he rode Shadow through the valley on clear mornings, Sam Bennett finally felt like he had come home.